first, you need to first and foremost take care of your mental health, because you will not be able to receive answers if you are consistently in this mindset of, okay, maybe this answer is true, but what if this, what if this, what if this? In order to receive answers from God, you need to be still.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Saints Unscripted. I am your host today, David Snell, and I am here with the illustrious Daniel Sorensen. Daniel, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
It's I first met you on actually the set of the Book of Mormon videos. Maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe how you got involved with doing that, and give us a little bit of background information about your experience in the church. And we're going to jump right in after that to a little bit more about your mission, because that's kind of what we're going to be. That's the beginning of what we're going to be talking about today. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, give us a little background.
So basically, a little bit of what I do before I get into my background. What I do is I do a lot of freelance film work. I'm currently actually at college at BYUI studying video production or filmmaking, and that's ultimately what I do. I film right now. I'm currently film nonprofit events, film weddings, film music videos, just a whole variety of different things. So that's kind of how I got started, and then I had an opportunity to meet some of the producers for the Book of Mormon videos. And then they just said, hey, reach out to us if you're interested, since you're interested in this career, and we'll potentially, if you meet our criteria, we might hire you to bring you on as part of the crew for the Book of Mormon videos. So after I got that opportunity, I just worked on there where I met you, met some other great people, and basically still do film now. And I'm continuing my education, like I said, at BYUI. Primary for that. But as far as my background goes, I was raised in as far as my background goes, I was raised in the church, very traditional family, just here in Idaho. I was born in a small town called Jerome, and basically went through all the traditional and, culturally different things, Boy Scouts, went through primary, all the different priesthood quorums, Aaronic priesthood, boys camp, all those things. So my upbringing was a pretty traditional Latter-day Saint, a traditional Latter-day Saint upbringing, and went to EFY, prepared to go on a mission, and then went through some stuff on my mission. But yeah, that's kind of my upbringing. Do you want me to talk about anything else right there?
You're good. Let's jump into your mission. So where were you called to?
Yeah, so I was called to New England. There's two missions there. I was stationed in the New Hampshire, Manchester mission. So we covered Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, a little bit of Connecticut, a little bit of New York, and most of Maine. So that's primarily where I served. I served right by the Joseph Smith birthplace for a while.
Cool. That's awesome. So how was your mission? Good experience, bad experience, challenging?
Yeah.
All the above?
All the above. I mean, one of the things that I think a lot of people say is missions is usually the two hardest years of your life. People often say my mission were the two best years of my life. But for me, I kind of word it as it was two of the most needed years. Just all the things I learned on my mission, lots of challenging aspects of it, finding out that I have mental health, mental health struggles, found that out on my mission. But I had some amazing opportunities that really also solidified my testimony, as well as some things that I struggled with. So overall, I love my mission. Looking back on it, I've been home for just over a year now, and it was, like I said, it was just a phenomenal experience. But yeah, it was It was a needed 2 years. It wasn't easy. wasn't excruciating. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. I kind of think of my mission as kind of not necessarily the best 2 years of my life, but maybe the best 2 years for my life up to that point, at least. So you talked a little bit about kind of the mental health challenges that surfaced while you were on your mission. Maybe are you comfortable telling us a little bit more about those and how you were able to work through them, or how those played out for you?
Yeah. So for me, eventually on my mission, I got diagnosed with anxiety and OCD, which before my mission, one of the things my family would say is they'd say, Daniel, you think too much. That would be something that family members would normally say. Never occurred to me or to them or really to anyone that I potentially may have had some form of OCD. And not OCD that when you think, when you see something, it needs to be cleaned, but specifically mine was, stuff in my studies I just get fixated on, or questions I had would just be fixated. So that, and then anxiety, just kind of went hand in hand on my mission. And because it was very new to me, I wasn't very much aware of really what mental health was, other than a very basic thing in high school, very basic learning in high school. Like I said, I just really wasn't aware of what it was. And I was serving in this one area where one of the things about New England, it is very, in some places, it is very spread out, very rural. And there was one of my areas where the population was about 2,000 people.
Wow.
It was pretty small. And the closest big town, or you could say, or semi-big town where we meet with other missionaries for our district meetings, was about an hour and a half away, driving wise. So it was quite a ways. And in a place like that, where I was just discovering, I think I might have some mental health struggles, that being in an area like that for me was very hard, because I was dealing with those things. And also during this time, I came across some information I'd never been exposed really to before my mission, to anything critical of religion or anything of the church in general. This was really my first time I feel like in this spot where I was struggling mentally wise, that coming across some information was challenging. It wasn't until much later, about, I'd say, another 6, 7, 8 months, where I finally got my mental health under control, manageable, got the right medication I needed. And then from there, I was also able to receive reasonable and faith-promoting answers to those things that I was struggling with during those 6 months. So I basically, towards the end of my mission, I described it as it was for those months, it was a lot of torment because I was dealing with this mental health, didn't know exactly how to cope with it. But like I said, ultimately, I did get it under control with medication, meeting with a therapist throughout the remainder of my mission. And like I said, I was able to receive reasonable answers. And now, mental health wise, I'm a lot better and have some great tools of how to deal with just mental health. And just mental health in general.
So it's not necessarily that you have, overcome those mental health issues, but rather that you've kind of found a way to manage them. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, there's some times where I'll have a panic attack sometimes. That doesn't happen very often, but I know tools I can use to deal with that. So if I'm having a panic attack, or I'm feeling very, very anxious, I'm like, okay, have I stopped to breathe? Did I take my medication for the day? Another simple one is, another simple one was, have I prayed today? But just kind of all those things, I have learned to reevaluate myself. And I try to do it in the moment, because sometimes it just gets very, very burdensome. So it can be, that's kind of how I deal with it now. So yeah, it's not completely gone, but for the most part, it's a lot better than what it was.
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned that you are trying to remember to pray and to take your medication. Because I think sometimes as members of the church, we hope that we can just, pray these things away and, have our mental illness challenges be cured. And maybe sometimes that happens. I mean, that's certainly possible. God can do all things, right? But, modern medicine is there for a reason as well, and it has its place, and therapy has its place, and all these things that I think are blessings to us that can help us through our challenges. So I think it's cool that you mentioned both of those things. Tell me a little bit more about the kind of faith journey that you've been on. You mentioned that it kind of started in the midst of all of these mental illness challenges, which is probably not the best time for something like that to happen. But how did that play out for you? How did you come out on top, essentially?
Yeah. So okay. Like I said, I came across challenging information, from critical information, from one of the most prominent critics of the church on my mission, because in my mission we dealt in the COVID missionary days, where we were purely online, just purely on Facebook. We couldn't go outside. And so we did a lot of Facebook work, and that's how I encountered some of this information. And for me, dealing with mental health, when I came across, some of this information, looking back on it, I realized that if I'm not in it, because I wasn't in a good spot mentally, it's harder to process, this information. Just a really quick side note, there's a talk, I believe there's a fair talk where, I can't remember who gave the talk, but he talks about mental health and how oftentimes those who struggle, or sometimes a lot of the people that he noticed that leave the church deal with some form of, mental health, whether it be anxiety, OCD, depression, things like that. And so for me, because I wasn't able to, at the time, get it under control, I struggled with certain questions, about church history, modern church issues, really struggling to understand things. I also had a few friends that I was close to that left the church, or were pursuing a lifestyle that just saddened me. And so, like, all these questions came in, and for me, it was a struggle trying to receive answers. It tormented me for months. At times, I could put it on the shelf per se, but for me, the way my mind works, I couldn't do that long term. It was very much just a temporary thing.
It sounds, sorry to interrupt you, but it sounds like kind of like the perfect storm for you. Because sometimes, a lot of people they come across challenging information from random people on the internet or random things on the internet. Other people are confronted with controversial information from people that are close to them, family members and friends that have left the church. Some people deal with this stuff in the midst of other mental health issues. And it's just, it's rough that all, like, it sounds like you were getting it from all angles, from strangers online, from maybe people that were close to you that chose to leave the church, who you respect and admire. Maybe even you haven't told me much about them, but I'm assuming here. And also in the midst of mental health challenges, like I think torment might have been the right word for it that you mentioned there. That's really hard.
Yeah. It's, like I said, it's something I think anyone that doesn't experience mental health, respectively, I don't think they can really understand what people go through. Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons, where I'm at today, helping people that struggle with faith. And that's one thing I see is people, not everyone, but a decent amount of people are actually struggling with they're mixing up they're thinking that if they can't put things on the shelf or receive answers, that only the anti ones are the critical ones are the right ones, because these things, these ideas, these topics just won't stop. There's no peace of mind. And that's what I dealt with on my mission for months. Like I said, I think it was around 6 to 8 months.
So kind of the idea that there are so many questions that may not have easy answers, or may not have answers at all, because we're talking about the world of faith here. Sometimes there just aren't answers. And so the idea is kind of that, like, sometimes, especially with these specific mental health challenges, those questions can become so nagging that it just becomes kind of easier to just throw up your hands and say, I'm done with it. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, and to an extent, I almost came to that point. I remember talking with my mission president, one, for mental health reasons, but previously, a few months before I really got my mental health under control, there was a missionary that I respected that, he left. He left the church. He came across the CES letter, and he would read that, and it really meant it was a very sad time for our mission, because this is someone that a lot of us respected, but however, that was kind of a point for me where I decided, is this going to happen to me too? Am I going to go home? Am I going to leave the church? Because again, keep in mind, I came from a very traditional family where, I love my family. They're amazing. But I would also acknowledge that I came up with the mindset of, prophets, they aren't perfect, but they need to do things that I would assume a prophet would do. So if a prophet makes a big mistake, if a prophet says something to the effect of people of African descent aren't worthy of the priesthood because they weren't valiant in the pre-existence or something like that. And that's just an example that I came across at one point, and that some people also struggle with. For my mindset with prophetic fallibility or infallibility was a struggle for me. And so all those things at once, coming from a traditional family mindset mixed with that mental health, it really threw me for a loop for a while. But a few months later, I had some great companions that were at least understanding enough of what I was going through. And there was this one companion I had, his name was Elder Swanson, and he was probably one of my favorite companions. Really was, in my view, he was very willing to work with me where I was at, which was great. And then after that, it was nice because from there, I would meet with my therapist pretty much once every week or once every 2 weeks or something like that. And then I was starting to actually get on the right medication, which was amazing. I was finally able to start getting my mental health under control. I still wasn't in a place where I could receive answers. During this time, I reached out to my cousin who helps also minister. He runs a podcast called the To Whom Shall We Go podcast. And I was able to talk to him quite a bit, and he got me in touch with some amazing people that a few of them have been interviewed on here. They're all from Uplift, such as like Leah Winnegar, Dan Ellsworth. I got to talk to people like them, and they also worked with me from where I was at until months later, where I was still struggling, but eventually I was able to get my mental health, and I could put these things in perspective and focus on, and I know this might sound a little cringy, but I was able to focus on the basics. I was able to focus on prayer and feeling connected to the Savior, focusing on the scriptures. And really where I was able to receive answers was when I felt connected to Jesus Christ. I did things that helped me. One of the things that my friend Leo said is he gave me a lesson about consecration and sanctification. And he says, what you're going through, it might be a living hell. It honestly was to an extent. And he said, consecrate these things you're going through. Pray mightily to your Heavenly Father, consecrate it so you can receive the sanctifying power. Now we think about consecration, oftentimes think of the law of consecration. And I think that's ultimately what it is you are consecrating this struggle that you have, this trial, and you're basically saying to God, please make this holy. Please allow me to receive your sanctifying power. And that was kind of a start for me, but as I look back on it, that's ultimately what happened is I was able to receive God's sanctifying power. And from there, get mental health under control. And after that, get reasonable answers to things, like LGBTQ issues, race in the priesthood, skin color in the scriptures, a variety of topics. There's many topics that I know we don't have time to go into, but
we've done lots of videos about all those topics. So
yeah.
Everybody watching, if you're curious about those, after you watch this video, go watch those videos. We'll link some of them at the end or in the description.
Yeah, but like I said, ultimately I was able to receive answers, and I went towards the end of my mission when I came through this when I came through this crisis of faith. I was able to talk to missionaries that may have struggled had questions. One of the things I told every single missionary I went on an exchange with, or any of my companions, I said, if you ever struggle, if you ever come across any critical information, send me a message and let's talk. We'll talk over the phone. And so far I haven't received any phone calls. So I'd say that's good for the most part, but that's an offer I give basically to anyone. I finished my mission, got and started studying more about church history, because on my mission they primarily want you to be studying the doctrine of the church, doctrine of Christ. It's not necessarily they have anything wrong with church history, but your purpose as a missionary is to invite others to come up to Christ, not to
be a historian.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's what what I was able to do when I got home. Is I've been studied a lot. Eventually, after being home for a while, being at school for a while, I got involved in a group, the group Uplift Community of Faith with Leo Winnegar, Dan Ellsworth, and many others. And basically, that's kind of where I'm at today, just ministering to people locally or online, basically. So that's all of it in a nutshell.
That was great, and I love Uplift. I love what they do. This is not a paid ad. We just are big fans.
Hashtag paid ad.
So I think one of the takeaways here is that, and I've seen this come up over and over again. For example, are you familiar with Don Bradley?
Yes, I love his work. Don Bradley's great.
Yeah, he's fantastic. We've had him on the show a couple of times, and his kind of conversion story or his faith journey story, whatever you want to call it, is one of my favorite because he leaves the church and then he ends up coming back, and it's a really incredible story. But he mentions how he had struggles with mental illness. And in the midst of that, it felt like he just had blinders on, and that he couldn't see, all the good things about the church and about church history. And he couldn't see answers when there were answers to some of this stuff. And that's kind of a theme I feel like I've seen repeatedly when it comes to mental health, is that it's really hard to get out of that tunnel vision. And so what I'm hearing from you is also kind of that you kind of had to take care of your mental health first before you were really able to make significant progress on the spiritual end of things.
Yeah. Well, if I could just add in real quick, and I don't know if Don Bradley or others might relate to this at all, but I would go as far even to say is some of the right answers, some of the best answers that I received that I read from scholars, that people like my cousin or that people like Leo and Uplift sent me, they were good answers. They were correct answers. But in my state of mind, I wasn't it's not that I was unwilling, but I just wasn't capable of understanding these answers because of my mental health. And so, yeah, just like answers can't even be correct, but oftentimes in a state of mind, we're not able to grasp those correct answers because of our current state of mind. It's like when you're sick. It's just like when you're sick.
That's fantastic. I love your story of faith. It reminds me a lot of, actually, I'm going to get the reference wrong, but I believe it's in Ether, where it talks about how our weaknesses can become strengths. And that's what I see in your story is you have taken these challenges and, as Leo suggested to you, you've consecrated them, and they have turned into strengths for you. Like I don't wish that kind of experience on anybody because it sounds extraordinarily difficult. But coming out on the other side of it, are you grateful for those experiences?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like I said, before my mission, I was very, very a traditional member of the church. And I don't, when I say traditional, I don't mean that as a bad thing, but oftentimes, those of us growing up in the church, sometimes you hear the saying it's very black and white thinking. And oftentimes I've noticed as I've talked with people is a lot of people that grew up in the church and aren't confronted with certain topics, it is very black and white. And on the other side, people will leave, and it's also very black and white, where before it's, prophets are called of God. They don't make hardly any mistakes. And if they make mistakes, don't worry about it, or et cetera. And then the opposite side that I've noticed, and I was at one point myself, was their prophets are, they're false prophets. They're not going to be able to receive answers. They just go with the times. They cave to any social pressure, etc. And there's a model, I believe it's by what was his name?
Bruce Hafen.
Bruce Hafen. I was about to say Stephen Hafen. I was like, that's not correct. But yeah, Bruce Hafen has an amazing model where he talks about we start out in simplicity. Then we can come across challenging information with maybe like mental health, for example, and we're in this very much in a complexity stage where it's hard to receive answers, especially in the mental health aspect. And then there's simplicity beyond complexity, which is you understand these complex issues, you understand that you have a lot of questions, but you also understand the beautiful things. Real quick, I want to talk one more experience on my mission. That I came on my crisis of faith, and months later, towards the end of my mission, I had this amazing experience, which again, these simplicity things that just strengthened my testimony. There was this one lady, her name was Polly, and she wasn't a member of the church. We were teaching her. She has MS. She's bedridden, and so we would go over, share, visit her, minister to her, and do all the times that missionaries do. We'd share the gospel with her. But there was one day where she was in so much pain. And I remember that me and my companions both felt the Spirit so strongly. We both don't cry hardly when we feel the Spirit. But I just felt this overwhelming impression that, Daniel, you need to give Polly a blessing. And I followed through that prompting. And it came across multiple times. At first I was just like, okay, but I don't know if she really likes blessings. But it just kept coming, and then I was like, okay. So I asked her. I just was straight up with her. I said, Polly, could we give you a blessing? And she said, yes, please. And which also caught me by surprise. So I gave her a blessing, and again, she was bedridden. She was in a lot of pain. She couldn't walk. And then I don't remember what I said during the blessing I gave her, but as soon as I said amen, with the help of her cane, she was in little pain. Out of nowhere, she was in little pain, and she had not been able to go outside in about, I believe, 8 months. And that night, she was able, or after we left, she went outside. She, of course, she still struggled to walk at times, but she was able to do it with minimal pain, very minimal pain, or hardly any pain at all. And for me, that was insane. Like that was one of those things that really also helped solidify my testimony in faith, the priesthood, and God's power. And obviously I had come out of my faith crisis by then, but it was one of those things that I know there's a lot of complex things about the gospel, but that was just one of those things that it was simple to me that there is a God. There's a God, and he enables people to use his power, so for me, that was just a little very humbling experience that I wanted to quickly share.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And we've been talking about kind of that process of moving from simplicity to complexity to the simplicity beyond complexity. And you're right, it's not bad to be in the stage of simplicity. Everybody starts there. You have to. And like, you see that process in everything, like learning about math. You start with 1 + 1 and you move on to more complex things from there that become more challenging. And then after you've learned those things and you have some experience, you can get to that point where you kind of reach that stage of simplicity beyond complexity. You see that everywhere. So it's not a bad thing to it's not a bad thing to pass through simplicity. You just want to be able to progress past the complexity when it comes along. And there's more that we could say about that. We've done a faith and beliefs episode about that process as well that might be helpful to people. But what advice would you give to other young people that maybe right now are kind of in that pit of despair that you were in a couple of years ago?
Yeah. So firstly, I would say, it's okay. It's okay what you're going through. And what I mean by that is it's okay to deal with mental health struggles. There's nothing wrong with you. You are still loved. Your mission president loves you. Your family members should love you. And ultimately, there's nothing that you're doing wrong that your Father in heaven sees what's wrong with you as in regard to mental health. I think I believe 1 in 4 people deal with mental health. So there's nothing wrong with dealing with mental health.
Or like it's not something that you have done to yourself. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Exactly. Yeah. That being said, though, that doesn't mean that you're going to be there forever. And it's important to put these things in perspective, because oftentimes when we're going through a faith crisis and we're dealing with mental health, we think these questions I have, does this just mean the church isn't true? I'm having all these questions about Joseph Smith, Brigham Young, polygamy, LGBTQ issues, women issues, just a whole variety of different things. There's a talk, a talk called Stand Forever that lists a whole bunch of different issues. But the thing is we need to understand these things and put them into perspective. First, you need to first and foremost take care of your mental health, because you will not be able to receive answers if you are consistently in this mindset of, okay, maybe this answer is true, but what if this? What if this? What if this? In order to receive answers from God, you need to be still. If you are dealing with mental health, how are you going to be able to be still if you haven't gotten the treatment you needed, if you're not in a good place mental health wise? And for me, that's what I had to do. Eventually, in order to be still and hear the Savior, have a great connection with him, it wasn't something that just came overnight. And that's what I would say is it's important to realize that in order to hear God, you need to first get your mental health under control, because there are scholarly answers which are great. Some of the greatest answers I've received have come from God. Those are some of the most powerful ones. Not to discredit any scholarship or anything that other people have said, what I've read, what I've studied, but God is one of those ways where I can receive answers. Again, it reminds me of Doctrine and Covenants, where it says on multiple occasions, it says, seek ye out of the best books, words of wisdom, seek by study and by faith. And when you include God in that process, you're going to be able to receive answers. I had that experience, and I know that whoever may be watching that, may be going through what I was going through, that when you get your mental health under control, you can and will have experiences like that to be able to hear God if you're willing to. But your mental health needs to come first, because you cannot hear God. I think a quick example is, I think people sometimes think, well, our church leaders don't deal with these things, or are the apostles and prophets are the brethren, they don't deal with these things. And I'd say that's not true. I believe it was George Buchanan who had to take a break for a few months because of mental health. And once he was able to get his mental health under control and manageable, he was able to step back into his responsibilities. So again, that's what's important. You need to have your mental health under control to receive answers from God. And when you're able to do that, you'll see miracles happen. And whether you be missionary or whether you be, young adult in the church, or whatever age you are. So that's what it's important to remember. And the other thing too that I offer people that may be struggling is, if you are trying to regain faith, if you are struggling with mental health and you are wondering how to best go about it, shoot me a message. I post, I talk with people frequently on a frequent basis, either in person or online. And I'm totally willing to talk to people. And if you're looking to rebuild faith, come join us at Uplift. I'm an admin in the group Uplift Community of Faith now. The group that helped me, I now help not just run, but help people receive answers to their questions. And the admin team, they are all amazing. I believe almost every one of us has gone through some form of crisis of faith. So know that you're not alone, mental health-wise or faith-wise. And there are people that have been through what you are at. There's people that have been through where you're at and are willing to help. I believe one of the biggest reasons why we're even talking today is because I care so much and know that there's a lot of good people out there that want to help you. But that's basically what I have to say.
Fantastic. Daniel Sorensen, thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you for sharing your story and your testimony. We appreciate you. And to everyone watching, we will see you guys next time.